Get your filthy hands off my counter.
It's a cashier's check. Deposit it.
2 salt me. You don't 5? Where'd you steal it?
I didn't steal anything. Do your job.
My job is keeping trash like you from scamming this bank. You people come in here smelling like the street, waving around fake paper.
Watch your mouth.
Or what? Take your little hustle somewhere else. We don't serve strays.
Desmond Turner's fist clenched on the counter.
There. Now crawl back to whatever hole you came from.
Crushed it and threw it in the trash. There. Now crawl back to whatever hole you came from. Then a door behind the teller line slammed open. The regional vice president came running out and asked one question that froze every single person in that lobby dead silent. The color drained from Bellworth's face, and for the first time in his career, that smirk disappeared. Tuesday morning, Charlotte, North Carolina, 9:14 a.m. A 12-year-old Honda Accord pulled into the parking lot of First Continental Bank on Eastway Boulevard. The paint on the hood had started to fade. A thin crack ran across the bottom of the windshield. The kind of car nobody looks at twice. Desmond Turner stepped out carrying a manila envelope, canvas work jacket, carpenter pants, steel-toed boots still dusted with concrete from a job site he'd visited an hour ago. He looked like a man who worked with his hands. And he was. Just not the way most people would guess. He held the front door open for an elderly woman shuffling in behind him with a cane. She thanked him without looking up. He nodded and stepped inside. The lobby of First Continental smelled like new carpet and old money. Marble counters polished to a mirror shine, framed photographs on the walls, executives shaking hands with local politicians, ribbon cuttings, charity golf tournaments. A bronze plaque near the entrance read, "Banking for Every American." 4 teller windows, a handful of customers in line, a water cooler humming against the far wall. Quiet, routine, the kind of morning where nothing was supposed to happen. Desmond pulled a number ticket from the machine and sat down in the waiting area. One person ahead of him. He didn't check his phone, didn't fidget. He glanced at the community bulletin board on the wall beside him. A flyer for a youth financial literacy program caught his eye. He read the whole thing, smiled a little, then looked away. A security guard stood by the front entrance. Young black man named Terrence, mid-20s, pressed uniform. He gave Desmond a small nod when their eyes met. The kind of silent acknowledgement that doesn't need words. 2 strangers who understood something without saying it. Desmond nodded back. Behind the glass wall of the corner office, Craig Bellworth adjusted his tie using the reflection on his computer monitor. Silver cufflinks, pressed white shirt, hair parted with surgical precision. Everything about him said, "I belong here." Everything about him was designed to say it. He watched a well-dressed white couple walk out of the loan officer's door. Big smiles, firm handshakes. Bellworth stood up, leaned out of his office, and waved. "Great seeing you, Phil. Tell Karen I said hello." First names, warm voice, the kind of man who made certain people feel welcome. Then his eyes drifted to the waiting area. He saw the work boots first, then the concrete dust on the jacket, then the skin. His gaze lingered for exactly 2 seconds. Then he looked away, the way you look away from something that doesn't concern you. Desmond's number was called. He walked to window 3. A young teller named Elaine Buckley greeted him. Late 20s, blonde hair pinned back, a smile that seemed genuine. "Good morning. How can I help you today?" "Morning. I'd like to deposit this." Desmond slid the cashier's check across the counter. $285,000. Drawn on a trust account. Clean. Verified. Routine. If you knew who he was. Elaine's fingers paused over the keyboard. Her eyes moved across the numbers once. Twice. She didn't say anything, but her posture shifted, straighter, more careful. "May I see your ID, please?" Desmond handed over his driver's license. She typed, checked. Everything matched. The account was active. The issuing bank was legitimate. The check was clean. She was about to hit the confirmation key when a shadow appeared behind her. Craig Bellworth. He'd been watching from his office. The amount had flashed on Elaine's screen, and he'd seen it from 20 feet away. $285,000. From the man in the concrete boots. He tapped Elaine on the shoulder. "I'll take it from here." Elaine hesitated. She looked at Desmond, then back at Bellworth. Her mouth opened, just barely, then closed. She stepped aside without a word. Bellworth slid into the chair. He didn't greet Desmond, didn't introduce himself. He picked up the cashier's check and held it up to the fluorescent light overhead, turning it slowly, like a man inspecting a counterfeit bill at a street market. Desmond watched, hands flat on the counter, still, patient. His breathing didn't change. He'd been here before, not at this bank, not in this chair, but in this exact moment, where someone looked at his face and decided, before a single word was spoken, that he didn't belong. The difference was, this time, someone was watching from behind that frosted glass, and she already knew exactly who Desmond Turner was. Bellworth set the check down on the counter between them. He didn't slide it back, didn't process it, just left it sitting there, like evidence. "Where did you get this?" His voice was flat. Not a question. An accusation wearing a question's clothes. Desmond kept his hands on the counter. "It's a distribution from a trust account. The issuing bank is printed right there." "I can read." Bellworth didn't look at the check. He looked at Desmond. "I'm asking how a check like this ends up in your hands." The word "your" sat in the air like smoke. Heavy, specific. Every person within 15 feet heard it. Desmond reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a business card. Set it on the counter next to the check. "Turner Capital Group, I'm the principal. The trust account is one of our holding vehicles. Call the number on the card if you need verification." Bellworth glanced at the business card for half a second. Then he pushed it aside with one finger, like brushing away a crumb. He never picked it up, never read it. "I'm going to need a second form of identification. You already have my driver's license. I need more. More than a government-issued ID and a verified cashier's check?" Bellworth leaned back in the chair, folded his arms. "I need a utility bill with your current address, a bank statement from the last 30 days, and a letter from the trust administrator confirming the distribution." Desmond's eyes narrowed. Not in anger, in recognition. He knew exactly what this was. None of those are standard requirements for depositing a cashier's check. I've banked here for 3 years. They're my requirements. Bellworth's chin lifted. And until they're met, this check isn't going anywhere. The lobby had gone quiet. Not the peaceful kind, the watching kind. An older white woman in a tweed blazer leaned toward her husband 2 chairs away. "What's the holdup?" she whispered. He shrugged, but neither of them looked away. At the next window, a young black mother held a toddler on her hip. She'd stopped mid-transaction. Her hand was frozen over the deposit envelope. She was staring at Bellworth's face, reading it, understanding it. She'd seen that face before, on teachers, on landlords, on men who smiled at some people and sneered at others. The security guard, Terrence, stood by the front door. His weight shifted from one foot to the other. His hand hovered near his radio but didn't touch it. He could feel what was building. He'd felt it in his own chest 100 times. But he was 24. 6 months on this job. Rent due Friday. He stayed where he was. Desmond turned back to Bellworth. His voice dropped lower, controlled. "I'd like to see the written policy that requires those documents for a cashier's check deposit." Bellworth blinked. Once. The arms unfolded. "Excuse me?" The policy, in writing. You said these are your requirements. I want to see the bank's written policy that supports them. Nobody asked Craig Bellworth for receipts. Not tellers, not customers, not anyone who sat on the other side of his desk. He was the policy. That was how it worked. In his branch, in his lobby, on his floor. His jaw tightened. I don't need to show you anything. I need to protect this bank from fraud. Fraud. He said it the way you'd say it about a crime you'd already solved. Not a suspicion, a verdict. Delivered in front of 12 witnesses, under fluorescent lights, in a lobby with a plaque that read, "Banking for Every American." Desmond didn't flinch. You're accusing me of fraud? I'm doing my due diligence. No, you're not. Desmond's voice was still low, still even. But something underneath had changed, something heavier. You looked at me and decided I was a criminal before I opened my mouth. You haven't run the check. You haven't called the issuing bank. You haven't even read my business card. You're not investigating. You're profiling. The word landed like a stone dropped in still water. Bellworth's nostrils flared. His neck flushed red above the collar of his pressed white shirt. No one had ever said that word to him. Not in this building, not to his face. He stood up, slowly, buttoned his jacket, looked down at Desmond the way a man looks at something stuck to the bottom of his shoe. I'm going to call our fraud department. You can wait, or you can leave. I'd suggest leaving. I'll wait, but I want to speak with your supervisor while you make that call. Bellworth smiled, the thin kind, the kind that doesn't reach the eyes. I am the supervisor, I am the manager, and I'm telling you, this check is not getting deposited today. He paused. Let it land. Maybe not ever. He picked up the deposit slip, the one Desmond had filled out in clean handwriting. Name, account number, amount, $285,000. He held it up, not to read it, to display it, like a prop in a show only he was performing. Then he looked Desmond dead in the eyes, crumpled it into a ball, and dropped it in the trash can beside his desk. The paper hit the bottom of the can with a soft thud, the only sound in the lobby. The young black mother at the next window pulled her toddler closer. She turned the child's face into her shoulder, shielding her from something no child should have to learn this early. The older white couple looked at each other. The husband opened his mouth, then closed it. They stayed seated. Elaine Buckley stood 3 feet behind Bellworth. She'd verified that check. She'd confirmed the ID. She'd watched the system clear every flag. She knew, with absolute certainty, that the transaction was legitimate. Her lips parted, a breath in, ready to speak. Bellworth turned his head, just slightly, just enough to catch her eye. One look, the kind that says don't. She closed her mouth, looked down at her hands, and said nothing. But her right hand moved to the keyboard, quietly. She opened the transaction log, hit print, and slid the page into the second drawer of her station without a sound. Desmond stood at the counter, still, unmoved. His hands hadn't left the marble surface. His voice hadn't cracked. His eyes hadn't dropped. He reached into his pocket and pulled out his phone. Not to call anyone, not to record. He opened the Notes app and typed 4 words. Then he put the phone back. I'd like your full name and employee ID number, please. Bellworth's eyebrows rose. He let out a short breath, almost a laugh. For what? Your lawyer? He said lawyer the way you'd say fairy tale, like the very idea was entertainment. Yes, Desmond said, exactly for that. The laugh stopped, the smirk stayed, but the eyes behind it shifted. Something moved behind them. Not fear, not yet, but the first cousin of it. The flicker you see in a man's face when he realizes the ground beneath him might not be as solid as he thought. Behind the frosted glass partition at the back of the lobby, Sandra Whitmore stood perfectly still. She'd been in the branch since 8 a.m., a routine compliance audit, reviewing files, checking protocols. The The kind of quiet, invisible work that keeps banks running. She'd heard the raised voice 5 minutes ago. Then the word fraud. Then silence. The wrong kind of silence. The kind that meant everyone in the room was watching something ugly happen and nobody was stopping it. She picked up her tablet, opened the client database, typed one name, Turner. The screen loaded, and Sandra Whitmore's face went white. Total deposits held across First Continental, $440 million. Largest private depositor in the Southeast Division. Client since 2019. Annual trust distributions, routine. Risk rating, 0. She looked up from the tablet. Through the frosted glass, she could see Bellworth standing over the counter. Arms crossed, chin high. That posture she'd seen 1,000 times from men who confused authority with power. She put the tablet down, pushed her chair back, and started walking toward the door. Bellworth didn't call the fraud department. He picked up the desk phone, dialed the police non-emergency line, and turned his back to Desmond, like he'd already stopped existing. Yes, this is Craig Bellworth, branch manager at First Continental on Eastway. I have a gentleman here attempting to deposit a potentially fraudulent instrument. He's becoming increasingly agitated, and I'm concerned for the safety of my staff. Desmond hadn't raised his voice once, hadn't moved from the counter, hadn't so much as shifted his weight. But in Bellworth's version of the story, the one he was building in real time, word by careful word, Desmond was already the threat. Bellworth hung up, turned to Terrence at the front door and pointed at Desmond. "Keep an eye on him. Don't let him leave until the officers arrive." Terrence walked over, slow steps, heavy steps. He positioned himself 2 feet from Desmond, not confrontationally, not aggressively, just there, present. A uniform doing what a uniform was told. He kept his eyes forward, but his voice was barely above a whisper. "Sir, I'm sorry, I have to stand here." Desmond didn't look at him. "I know, it's not your fault." Terrence swallowed hard. His hand hung at his side. He could feel the eyes of the lobby on both of them. 2 black men, one in a security uniform and one in a work jacket, standing next to each other like suspects in a lineup. In a bank they both had every right to be in. The older white couple near the water cooler stood up. The husband buttoned his coat, muttered something to his wife, something about always something at this location, and they walked out. They didn't look at Desmond, didn't look at Bellworth, just left, like the whole thing was an inconvenience to their morning. But not everyone left. A younger white man, late 20s, business casual, laptop bag over one shoulder, stayed in his seat near the window. He shifted his phone from his pocket to his lap, screen facing the counter. The red recording light blinked once, then stayed on. He didn't look up, didn't draw attention, just sat there, watching, capturing. The young black mother at the next window turned to Elaine's colleague at the adjacent station. Her toddler was gripping her collar with both hands. "Excuse me. I just watched your manager throw that man's paperwork in the trash and call the police on him. Is anyone going to do anything?" The teller, a woman in her 40s with reading glasses on a chain, looked at the mother, then looked at Bellworth's office, then looked back down at her keyboard. "Ma'am, I'm sure the manager is following protocol." "Protocol?" The mother's voice cracked, not with anger, with something worse. Recognition. "What protocol says you throw a man's money in the garbage?" No answer. The teller's fingers kept typing, but they weren't typing anything, just moving, filling the silence with the sound of productivity. Bellworth came around the counter. This was new. Managers stayed behind the glass, behind the desk, behind the line that separated us from them. But Craig Bellworth stepped over that line, physically, and walked into the lobby. He stood over Desmond, close, too close, the kind of distance that forces a man to either step back or stand his ground. Desmond stood his ground. "Sir." Bellworth's voice was louder now, performative, for the lobby. for the cameras he'd forgotten were there. "I'm going to need you to step away from the counter and wait outside until the officers arrive. I'm a customer of this bank. I have an account here. I have a right to be here. Not if I determine you're a security risk." Bellworth straightened, drew himself taller. "And right now, that's exactly what I'm determining." "Based on what?" "My check cleared your system. My ID matches. Your teller verified it." Bellworth's eyes flicked to Elaine. A warning shot. "Don't confirm that." Then back to Desmond. "Based on my professional judgment." Professional judgment, the two cleanest words for the dirtiest thing. He reached for Desmond's arm, not gently, not like a guide, like a man grabbing something he intended to move. Desmond pulled back, one step, sharp, controlled. Not a retreat, a line. "Don't touch me." The words came out low, steady, but underneath them was something that made Bellworth's hand freeze in the air. Not fear. Authority. The kind of voice that men who've been tested 1,000 times learn to sharpen into a blade. Bellworth dropped his hand, but he didn't step back. Instead, he leaned in, close enough that only Desmond could hear. "Listen to me carefully. I don't know where you got that check, and I don't care. But people like you, from wherever it is you come from, don't walk in here with $285,000. That doesn't happen. So either you tell me whose money this really is, or you walk out that door before those officers put you in the back of a car. People like you." The words didn't explode. They seeped, like poison through a crack in the floor, quiet, precise, the kind of violence that doesn't leave a bruise but breaks something deeper. Desmond's jaw tightened, his hands, still flat on the counter, pressed down harder, knuckles lighter. The first visible crack in his composure since he walked through that door. He breathed. One breath, deep, through the nose. The kind of breath a man takes when he's choosing between what he wants to do and what he's going to do. "I'll wait for the police, and I'd like them to hear exactly what you just said to me." Bellworth pulled back. The smirk returned, but it was thinner now, tighter. The kind of smile a man wears when he's no longer sure he's winning but can't afford to show it. 3 feet behind the counter, Elaine Buckley sat at her station with her hands in her lap. She'd verified that check. She'd seen the system clear it. She knew the ID matched. She knew the account was active. She knew, with absolute documentable certainty, that Craig Bellworth had just refused a legitimate transaction, publicly humiliated a customer, called the police on an innocent man, and whispered something in his ear that she couldn't hear but could read on Desmond's face. She knew all of it, and she hadn't said a word. Her eyes stung, not from tears, from the heat of her own silence pressing against the inside of her chest. She thought about her mother, about the time her mother told her, "If you watch something wrong happen and say nothing, you didn't watch it. You helped it." She opened her drawer. The transaction log she'd printed earlier was still there. She picked it up, folded it once, slid it into her bag under the counter. Then she sat up straight and waited for what came next. Blue and red lights flashed through the front window, 2 patrol cars. The glass doors opened and 2 officers walked in. One tall, one stocky, both in full uniform, radios crackling on their shoulders. The lobby air changed, thicker, heavier, the sound of boots on marble. Bellworth moved fast. He met them at the door, talking before they'd even stopped walking, hands gesturing, voice low and urgent, pointing at Desmond without looking at him, like directing someone's attention to a problem that needed removal. The taller officer broke away from Bellworth and approached Desmond. Professional, neutral. "Sir, can you tell me what happened here?" Desmond spoke clearly. No rush, no emotion, facts. "I came in to deposit a cashier's check. The manager refused the transaction. He accused me of fraud without running any verification. He threw my deposit slip in the trash. He called me an animal in front of other customers. He attempted to physically remove me. And then he called you. The officer looked at the check, looked at the ID on the counter, looked at the screen behind Elaine's station, still showing the verified transaction. He turned to Bellworth. Sir, this check appears to be legitimate. Can you tell me the specific reason you flagged this transaction? Bellworth's mouth opened, closed, opened again. It was my professional judgment. The amount is inconsistent with the customer's profile. The officer let the word hang. Profile. His profile, the officer repeated. Not a question. A mirror. Bellworth felt it. The reflection of his own words coming back, shaped differently. He tried to recover. Look, I'm trying to protect this bank. That's my job. Large cash instruments from unfamiliar sources. He has an account here, the officer said. Your own system shows it. Silence. The stocky officer looked at Desmond. Notepad open. Sir, would you like to file a formal complaint? Desmond opened his mouth to answer. And that's when the door slammed open. Not the front door, not the side entrance, the back office door. The one behind the teller line that no customer ever sees open. It hit the wall so hard the framed photograph next to it rattled on its nail. Sandra Whitmore came through it like a woman who'd already decided that every second she'd waited was a second too long. Navy suit, pearl earrings, tablet clutched in her left hand. Her heels cracked against the marble, fast, sharp, deliberate, each step louder than the last. She didn't look at Bellworth. She walked past the teller stations, past Elaine, past the officers, straight to Desmond Turner. She stopped in front of him, and the first thing she did was extend her hand. Mr. Turner, I am Sandra Whitmore, Regional Vice President of First Continental Bank. I was in the back office conducting a compliance audit. Her voice shook, not from weakness, from restraint. I heard everything, and I owe you an apology that I should have delivered 10 minutes ago. The lobby didn't move, didn't breathe. Every head in the room turned toward her like flowers following the sun, except this sun was burning something down. Bellworth took a half step forward. His voice cracked through the silence like a man reaching for a rope that was already fraying. Sandra, I was handling a routine fraud review. The customer presented a high-value instrument and I followed standard. She turned on him, not slowly, not politely. The way a blade turns. Craig. One word. His name. But the temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees when she said it. Do you have any idea who you just called an animal? Bellworth's mouth hung open. No sound came out. Sandra held up her tablet. The screen faced the lobby. Bright, sharp, impossible to miss. Desmond Turner, founder and sole owner of Turner Capital Group, private equity, $2.1 billion under management. She let that number sit for exactly 3 seconds. Then she kept going. His firm holds $440 million in deposits across our institution. $440 million. He is the single largest private depositor in our entire Southeast Division. He has banked with us since 2019. His risk rating is 0. 0, Craig. The tablet came down. Her eyes didn't. And you threw his deposit slip in the trash. The silence that followed wasn't the empty kind. It was full, swollen, pressing against the walls of the lobby like something about to rupture. Bellworth's face didn't just go pale. It collapsed, layer by layer. The smirk, gone. The posture, folded. The chin that had been tilted up for the last 30 minutes dropped toward his chest, like someone had cut the string holding it. I didn't... His voice came out thin, reedy, a sound no one in that lobby had ever heard from him. There was no way to... He wasn't in the system under... He was. Sandra's voice cut clean through. He was in the system. His account was verified. His check was cleared. Your own teller confirmed it before you overrode her. You didn't miss the information, Craig. You ignored it. Because you looked at this man and decided what he was before you looked at a single screen. Bellworth's hand reached toward the trash can. Instinct. Reflex. Like he could reach in and pull back the crumpled slip and undo the last half hour of his life. "Don't bother." Desmond's voice, low, even, quiet enough that people leaned forward to hear it. "I won't be depositing anything here today." He picked up his cashier's check from the counter, slid it back into the manila envelope, put the envelope under his arm. Then he looked at Sandra Whitmore. Not with anger, not with triumph, with something harder to name. Exhaustion, maybe. The kind that comes not from one morning, but from 1,000 mornings just like it. "I appreciate you stepping in, Ms. Whitmore. I do, but I need you to understand something." He paused. The lobby held its breath. "This isn't about who I am. It's not about my firm. It's not about $400 million. It's about how he treated me before he knew any of that." His eyes moved to Bellworth, then back to Sandra. "If I were just a man depositing his paycheck, a truck driver, a janitor, a construction worker, would anyone have walked out of that office?" Sandra didn't answer. Her lips pressed together. Her eyes dropped for 1 second, just one, before she caught herself. The officers didn't answer. The taller one shifted his weight. The stockier one looked at his notepad like the answer might be written there. The lobby didn't answer, because the answer was already in the room. It had been there the whole time, sitting in the silence of every person who watched and said nothing. Desmond nodded, slowly, like a man confirming something he'd already known. "That's what I thought." Bellworth moved first, not toward the door, toward Desmond. His hands were shaking, fingers trembling at his sides like a man watching his house burn and reaching for a garden hose. "Mr. Turner, Desmond, I made a terrible mistake. A terrible, terrible mistake. Please, let me process that deposit right now. Personally, I'll waive every fee on your account. No. One word. Final. The kind of no that doesn't come with a second chance." Bellworth kept talking. Faster now. The words tumbling out wet and loose like a man trying to bail water from a sinking boat with his bare hands. "I didn't know. If I had known who you were, I never would have." That's the problem. Desmond's voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. "You just said it yourself. If you had known who I was." "That's exactly the problem, Mr. Bellworth." Bellworth's mouth opened. Nothing came out. He stood there, arms half raised, palms up, frozen in the posture of a man begging for something that had already left the room. Sandra Whitmore stepped between them, phone in one hand, badge lanyard in the other. She'd been on the phone with corporate for 90 seconds. That was all it took. "Craig." Her voice was quiet now, controlled. The kind of quiet that's worse than shouting. "You are suspended from this branch effective immediately, pending a full internal investigation into your conduct this morning and your handling of customer transactions over the past 24 months. The number, 24 months, hit different. This wasn't about today. Today was the match. They were looking for everything it had already burned. "Please hand over your badge and your office keys." Bellworth's hand went to his lanyard. His fingers fumbled with the clasp. 3 tries. 4. His hands wouldn't stop shaking. "Sandra, please." His voice cracked on the second word. 15 years. I've been with this bank for 15 years. This has never... 15 years. Sandra repeated it back, flat. "And in 15 minutes, you destroyed what took us 3 years to build with Mr. Turner's firm." The badge came off. The keys came out of his pocket. He set them on the counter, the same counter where he'd crumpled Desmond's deposit slip 20 minutes earlier. The same marble surface he'd leaned over with his chin up and his chest out and his voice full of all the authority he thought he had. Now he stood on the wrong side of it. The 2 police officers, The same officers Bellworth had called to remove Desmond stepped forward. The taller one gestured toward the door. "Sir, we'll escort you to your vehicle." Bellworth looked at them. The realization landed slowly, the way a crack spreads through glass. These men were here because he'd called them. He'd dialed the number. He'd asked them to come. And now they were walking him out. He didn't resist, didn't argue. He walked between them with his head down and his hands in his pockets. The glass doors opened. The morning sun hit his face. He squinted, like a man stepping out of a dark room into light he wasn't ready for. The doors closed behind him. The lobby exhaled. The young man in business casual stood up from his seat by the window. He slid his phone into his pocket and walked over to Desmond. His voice was steady, but his eyes were bright. The way people look when they've just witnessed something they know matters. "Sir, I recorded everything, from the moment he picked up your check. If you need it, for anything, I'll send it to you right now." Desmond looked at him. A beat, then a nod. "Thank you." The young black mother was next. She hadn't left her spot at the next window. Her toddler was asleep on her shoulder now, the way children sleep through storms they'll learn about later. She walked up to Desmond. Her eyes were red, not from crying, from holding it in. "Thank you for not leaving." Her voice broke on the last word. "Thank you for standing there." Desmond put his hand on her shoulder, brief, gentle. "You stood there too." Then Elaine. She came out from behind the counter. Something she'd never done during working hours. She stood in front of Desmond with her hands clasped in front of her, the posture of a woman carrying something she needed to put down. "Mr. Turner, I verified your check. I knew it was legitimate the moment I ran it. I should have said something when he took over. I should have spoken up. I didn't." She paused. Her voice thinned. "I'm sorry." Desmond looked at her for a long time, not with anger, not with forgiveness either, something in between, something that understood. "You were afraid of your boss. I get that. But what matters now is what you do next." Elaine nodded. Her hand moved to the bag under her counter, the one with the printed transaction log folded inside. She'd already decided what she was doing next. Desmond put the manila envelope under his arm, straightened his work jacket, walked toward the door. Terrence was already there, holding it open. His eyes were wet, but his posture was straight. "I'm sorry, sir." Desmond stopped, looked at him, really looked at him, the way an older man looks at a younger one when he sees something worth saying. "You don't owe me an apology, young man, but this bank owes everyone in this room one." He walked out, across the parking lot, past the patrol cars, past the spot where Bellworth was sitting in his BMW with both hands on the steering wheel, staring at nothing. Desmond got into his 12-year-old Honda Accord, put the key in the ignition, sat there for a moment. Just one moment. Then he pulled out of the lot and turned left on Eastway Boulevard. Quiet, unhurried, the same way he'd come in. The video hit the internet at 6:47 p.m. that same Tuesday. Joel Anderson, 28, marketing analyst, had never posted anything political in his life, uploaded 7 minutes of unedited footage with one line. "This happened today. First Continental Bank, Charlotte. Watch the whole thing." By Thursday, 4.2 million people had watched Craig Bellworth crumple a black man's deposit slip and throw it in the trash. But the clip that went most viral wasn't the trash can. It was the audio. Joel's phone had picked up Bellworth's whisper, the one meant only for Desmond. "People like you don't walk in here with $285,000. 7 seconds. Played on every network, quoted in every headline, printed on protest signs outside the Eastway branch by Friday. Hashtag Justice for Desmond trended nationally within 36 hours. First Continental released a corporate statement. Nobody believed it. The comments were brutal. Thousands of people sharing their own Bellworths, their own crumpled deposit slips. The internal investigation was supposed to take 3 weeks. It took 4 days. 14 transactions. That's what they found. 14 minority customers flagged for enhanced fraud review over 24 months. Everyone initiated by Bellworth personally. Everyone overriding a teller's verification. Every customer had a clean account, verified identity, and legitimate instrument. 14 flags. 0 confirmed fraud. During the same period, Bellworth fast-tracked 31 deposits and loan applications from white clients, some with weaker profiles, incomplete documentation, one with a credit score 90 points below threshold. All approved. Same day. First name greetings. Elaine Buckley gave the first formal statement. She handed over the transaction log, described the override, the look, the whisper she couldn't hear but could read on Desmond's face. Then she said something that stopped the investigator cold. This wasn't the first time. It was just the first time someone stayed. Terrence gave a written statement. So did Gloria Patterson, a former teller who'd worked under Bellworth for 3 years and described a pattern so consistent it could have been a manual. Black or brown customer. Large transaction. Bellworth appears. Customer leaves. No record. No complaint, no trail. Until now. The DOJ Civil Rights Division opened a preliminary inquiry. Naomi Turner, Desmond's wife, a consumer protection attorney, filed a formal CFPB complaint. Not for Desmond alone, for all 14 customers. The CFPB accepted within 72 hours. Then came the part that didn't make the news. Tuesday evening, the same day it happened, Desmond called his portfolio manager and gave one instruction. Move everything. $440 million. Every account, every holding. Out. No press conference, no speech. Just a wire transfer and a signature. The withdrawal hit First Continental's Southeast Division like an earthquake. Liquidity ratios dropped below regulatory minimums in 48 hours, and the timing was catastrophic. First Continental was finalizing a $1.2 billion merger with Atlantic Mutual Bancorp. 18 months of negotiations, letters of intent signed, regulatory approval expected within 60 days. Atlantic Mutual's CEO saw the video Wednesday, read the CFPB complaint Thursday, reviewed the liquidity report Friday. By Monday, the merger was paused. It eventually closed, 4 months late, at a valuation $180 million lower than the original terms. One man's prejudice cost his own company $180 million. Craig Bellworth was formally terminated, not just for Desmond, for the pattern. His banking license was suspended. He was named personally in the CFPB complaint. His legal bills started at 6 figures and kept climbing. A former colleague told the Charlotte Observer, "Everyone knew Craig had a problem. Nobody said anything because his branch hit its numbers. Hit his numbers. The 4 words that keep men like Bellworth employed until someone like Desmond Turner doesn't walk out the door." The CFPB hearing came 6 weeks later. Bellworth's attorney offered one defense. Mr. Bellworth was following internal risk protocols. The judge asked one question. Produce the written protocol. Silence. There wasn't one. Bellworth's protocol lived in his eyes, in the 2-second scan from boots to jacket to skin. Ruling. First Continental fined $3.8 million. Mandatory nationwide anti-discrimination training. Independent compliance monitoring for 36 months. Craig Bellworth personally barred from the banking industry for 5 years. Bellworth wasn't in the courtroom for the ruling, neither was Desmond. He was at a community center in Charlotte's West End, standing in front of 32 kids. The Youth Financial Literacy Program, the same one from the flyer on the bank's bulletin board. The one he'd smiled at the morning everything happened. He'd been funding it for 4 years. Nobody at that bank ever knew. He told those kids one thing, not about money, not about credit scores. Every door that closes on you is a door you can build yourself. But you shouldn't have to. 18 months later. Desmond Turner moved every dollar of Turner Capital Group's deposits to Heritage First, a black-owned bank in Charlotte with 2 branches and a staff of 31. Within 6 months, Heritage First expanded its small business lending program by 60%. They opened a 3rd branch on the west side. They hired 12 new employees. 4 of them were kids from the financial literacy program. Elaine Buckley quit First Continental 3 weeks after the hearing. She didn't go to a bigger bank. She didn't chase a title. She walked into Heritage First with a printed resume and a transaction log that had already changed the course of a federal investigation. She's their community outreach manager now. Every Tuesday morning, she runs a walk-in clinic for first-time depositors, people opening their first accounts, people who've been turned away somewhere else, people who need someone behind the counter to look them in the eye and say, "Yes, your money is welcome here." She never misses a Tuesday. Terrence used his share of the class action settlement to enroll in community college. Criminal justice, full course load. He told a local reporter he wanted to be the kind of person who doesn't just stand by the door. The young black mother, Keisha Adams, started a blog 3 weeks after the video went viral. She called it Receipts. One word. She documented banking discrimination, her own, other people's, the kind that happens at marble counters in buildings with plaques about serving every American. 200,000 followers in 14 months. She got invited to testify before a congressional subcommittee on consumer financial protection. She brought her daughter, the same toddler who'd been asleep on her shoulder that Tuesday morning. The girl was 3 now. She sat in her mother's lap through the whole hearing and didn't make a sound. Joel Anderson, the man who recorded the video, went back to his marketing job. He never posted another video. He didn't need to. When people asked him about it, he said one thing: "I just didn't look away." First Continental implemented new anti-discrimination protocols, mystery shopper audits, mandatory bias training, a hotline for customers to report differential treatment. The merger with Atlantic Mutual eventually closed at the reduced valuation, $180 million less. The board replaced 2 regional executives. Gerald Ashford kept his job but lost his bonus. The Charlotte Observer ran a profile on him with a headline that aged like milk: "A CEO's promise to do better." The CFPB used the case as precedent in 3 subsequent banking discrimination investigations. Bellworth's name appeared in the footnotes of federal filings for years. Not as a person, as a pattern. Craig Bellworth's LinkedIn still says banking professional. His last post was 11 months ago, a shared article about leadership in financial services. No comments, no reactions, no connections added since. He applied to 4 banks after his 5-year ban was announced. All 4 declined before the interview stage. A recruiter told him off the record that his name was unsearchable, meaning every Google result led back to the same 7-minute video. He was last seen working at a car dealership in Gastonia, finance department. He processes loan applications. He doesn't make the decisions anymore. And Desmond Turner? Tuesday morning, 9:14 a.m. A 12-year-old Honda Accord pulled into the parking lot of Heritage First Bank on West Boulevard. Same car, same work jacket, same manila envelope. He walked in. The teller at window 3 looked up and smiled. "Good morning, Mr. Turner." He slid a cashier's check across the counter. She processed it. 3 minutes. No questions. No second ID. No phone calls. No whispers. He said thank you. She said, "Have a good day." He walked out. Same quiet steps. Same unhurried pace. Same man who'd walked into a different bank 18 months ago and been told to crawl back to whatever hole he came from. Nothing about him had changed. Everything around him had. On the wall of his office, between a framed photo of himself at 22 holding his first lease and a picture of Naomi and the kids at the beach, there's a small frame. Simple. Black border. No label. Inside it, smoothed flat and mounted on white cardstock, is a crumpled deposit slip. Name, account number, $285,000. The creases are still visible, deep lines pressed into the paper by a man's fist. He kept it, not as a trophy, not as a grudge, as a receipt. So let me ask you something. Have you ever been in that lobby? Not Desmond's lobby, your own. A store, a restaurant, an office, a place where someone was being treated like they didn't belong. Did you stay? Did you speak? Or did you walk out like that couple by the water cooler? Tell me in the comments. I want to hear your story. And if this one stayed with you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Like, subscribe. I'll see you in the next one.